So I want to start today with a quote, actually two quotes. The first is, wealth is not about how much you have, but about how much you are able to give away.
Right.
And the second one is, the world is changed by your example, not your opinion. And, if you read those statements slowly, they don't really sound like just polite advice, do
No,
they?
not at all.
They sound like an accusation.
Yeah, exactly. An accusation.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are tackling a pretty massive, kind of uncomfortable, but ultimately life-changing question today, which is, are you living a life of accumulation and performance, constantly curating your image for everyone else? Or are you living what we might call a life from the inside out?
And what's fascinating here is that to even try and answer that question, we're pulling from wildly different worlds today. I mean, we're looking at insights from a Roman emperor, a legendary basketball player, military generals, modern
What a
philosophers.
lineup.
Right. But they all converge on this single, remarkably coherent account of what character truly costs. Because, this isn't some cozy collection of daily affirmations.
No, definitely not.
It's a direct challenge. It really forces you to ask if you are spending your finite energy crafting this convincing image, or if you're actually doing the invisible, unglamorous work of building real substance.
Okay, let's unpack this because,
Yeah.
what does living from the inside out actually look like in everyday practice? If you're listening to this right now, you know how heavily our culture prioritizes the finished product.
Oh, totally. We're obsessed with it.
Right. We love the illusion of effortless mastery. We see someone who is, incredibly successful or really calm under pressure or just super talented, and we immediately assume it's just baked into their DNA.
Yeah, we completely ignore the reality of character and habit. We romanticize talent because, well, it honestly lets us off the hook.
Oh, that's so true.
Right. Because if someone is just naturally gifted, then, we don't have to feel bad about not putting in the work ourselves. But if we strip away that external illusion, we actually have to face the internal reality.
Which brings us to Mike Rowe, right?
Exactly. Take Mike Rowe's SWEAT pledge. That stands for skill and work ethic aren't taboo. He states very plainly that we are the products of our choices, not our circumstances.
He has that line, I will never blame anyone for my shortcomings, and I will never accept the credit for something I didn't do.
Yes, that is the absolute bedrock of living from the inside out.
Right, because if you are constantly blaming external circumstances for your shortcomings, your locus of control is entirely outside of yourself. You're just, at the mercy of the weather.
Exactly. And speaking of weather, there's this brilliant military insight from General John J. Pershing that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, yeah, the leadership quote.
Yeah, he observed that a competent leader can get efficient service out of poor troops, but an incapable leader can completely demoralize the best troops in the world.
Well,
And why? Because the leader's internal state literally becomes the weather that everyone else has to work in.
that is such a profound way to look at it. The leader is the weather.
Right. Leadership isn't a function of external resources or, perfect conditions. It's a function of character. It's the psychological climate you create for the people around you.
I love that concept so much because it's not just about managing logistics, it's about managing your own internal climate. And we see the technical side of this in sports, too. Gary Player, the legendary golfer, has this brilliant line that I think about all the time.
Which one?
He says, you must work very hard to become a natural golfer.
Oh, I love that. It completely dismantles the myth of effortless grace.
Completely.
Because what looks like natural ability from the outside is really just the accumulated residue of invisible effort. Michael Jordan makes the exact same point about mastering the fundamentals.
Right, because if you practice the wrong way,
Yeah, he pointed out that if your technique is wrong, all you become is very good at shooting the wrong way. The appearance of mastery only ever comes from correct, painstaking repetition.
it really makes me think about how we approach our own goals. It's like it's like trying to build a house by painting the air before you pour the foundation.
That's exactly what it is.
Everyone wants the natural grace of a Gary Player or the highlight reel shots of a Michael Jordan, but no one wants to do the invisible, unglamorous sweating in the dark to actually get there. But the ultimate readout never lies.
No, effort doesn't lie.
Exactly. You don't look like your goals. You look like your habits.
That's it. Your habits are the foundation. But, if habits and character are our foundation, how do we actually protect them?
Right, because the world is going to push back.
Constantly. Once you start doing the work, the world is going to have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
And that requires a transition from just physical repetition to internal clarity.
Okay, so moving from just doing the reps to knowing who you are.
Exactly. We have to develop a clear, almost unshakable side of ourselves so we aren't constantly blown around by the wind of external opinions and, little slights.
Which brings us to Corey Allen. He points out that the more clearly you see yourself, the less reactive you are to how others see you. He actually calls self-knowledge the architecture of equanimity.
The architecture of equanimity. And let's break down what that actually means psychologically.
Please do.
Well, if you don't know who you are, every moment of public evaluation pulls you off center. Every critique feels like this deep wound, a literal siege on your identity.
Because you have no internal anchor.
Right. And why do we reach for these external things in the first place? Bertrand Russell argued that it's our preoccupation with possessions and status that actually prevents us from living freely and nobly.
So we're using stuff to fill the void.
Yeah, we use external accumulation, whether that's buying things, chasing status, or just obsessing over other people's opinions, as a direct substitute for internal clarity. The person who isn't sure who they are will just frantically reach for things that announce who they want to be.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little bit, because it sounds great in theory, but isn't a reaction just, human nature?
Well, sure, we're wired for it.
Right. If you're pouring your absolute soul into your work or your family or a massive project and someone publicly attacks it or disrespects you, not reacting feels almost impossible. I mean, it stings.
It does.
Are we really supposed to just be emotionless robots about it?
I'm really glad you brought that up because that is a massive misconception about Stoicism. It's incredibly difficult, and that's precisely why it's a daily practice, not just a light switch you flip.
Right.
Think about Marcus Aurelius. He was writing from the absolute center of a global empire. His meditations weren't these little victory laps written in a serene garden.
Right. He was literally fighting wars and dealing with betrayals.
Exactly. They were frantic, daily practices of self-correction in the friction of real treacherous power. The Stoic method he outlines isn't about not feeling the sting. It's about ensuring that when things go wrong, the first step is restraint, not response.
But why? Why shouldn't we defend ourselves immediately when we're wronged?
Because, as Aurelius notes, the consequences of our anger and grief are usually much, much more harmful than the initial circumstance that caused them.
Oh, that is interesting.
He talks about it like a second injury. Think of the emotional flare as a second injury that you actively inflict upon yourself.
Oh, okay.
The circumstance, the insult, the failure, the bad luck, that was only the first injury. Your furious, uncontrolled reaction is the second injury, and it's almost always the one that leaves a permanent scar.
Ah, okay, that makes total sense. So your reaction is actually the thing that does the most lasting damage to your reputation, to your peace of mind.
Absolutely.
It's basically the first rule of holes. When you find yourself in one, stop digging.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. You get critiqued, you fall in a hole, and then your defensive anger just brings out a giant shovel.
Precisely. Most people's reactive emotions make their situation exponentially worse before they've even begun to address the actual problem. Building that internal clarity, that architecture of equanimity we talked about, it makes the shovel completely unnecessary.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's say you do it. Let's say you achieve this internal clarity. You stop digging your own holes, you throw away the shovel, and you stop obsessing over your image.
All right.
What is it all for? Because I feel like modern internet culture has totally hijacked Stoicism.
Oh, completely.
It's been turned into this incredibly selfish, hyper-individualistic tool for, optimizing your morning routine. You know the vibe. It's all wake up at 4 a.m., take a freezing cold plunge, ignore your haters, crush your financial goals, become a Sigma male.
Yeah, it's marketed as a productivity system dressed up in ancient Roman robes. The viral moments are always Seneca taking cold plunges or Marcus Aurelius waking up before dawn. But Ryan Holiday's analysis of this completely shatters that selfish interpretation.
Thank goodness.
He points out that true Stoicism isn't just a life hack to become a more ruthless CEO. It's fundamentally a philosophy about virtue. It demands service. It demands sacrifice.
Exactly. We completely forget that ancient Stoics like Thrasea, Cato, and Helvidius didn't practice self-restraint so they could have better quarterly earnings.
No, they didn't.
They actually gave their lives for these ethical ideals. It was about an unyielding obligation to other people, to basic decency, and to the truth.
And that obligation is heavy. Let's look at the devastating allegory from Albert Camus' novel, The Fall.
Okay.
It describes a successful, well-respected man walking along the canals in Amsterdam at night. and he hears a scream and a splash in the dark water.
Oh, wow.
He stops. But then he convinces himself he didn't hear it clearly. It's too cold, it's too late, it's too inconvenient. So he keeps walking, and an innocent person drowns.
That is horrifying.
It is. It's a precise, haunting illustration of looking the other way, and it destroys him internally. Marcus Aurelius constantly chastised himself, not just for the wrong things he did, but for the right things he failed to do.
Because inaction is a choice.
Exactly. He deeply believed that you can commit a profound injustice simply by doing nothing. If you have built this internal strength, you are required to use it for others.
That hits so much harder than a cold plunge. I mean, it takes this whole idea of living from the inside out and violently forces it outward.
Yes.
It's not about your own isolated peace of mind at all. It's about what you owe to the world around you. There's that beautiful quote from Rabindranath Tagore that connects perfectly to this. He says, "The one who plants trees, knowing that he will never sit in their shade, has at least started to understand the meaning of life."
Let's really break down the connection there because it's vital.
Yeah.
Kema's showing us the immediate catastrophic failure to act, ignoring the drowning person because it's inconvenient. While Tagore is showing us the ultimate long-term commitment to act, planting the tree. Both require you to step outside your immediate self-interest.
They demand that you look past yourself.
Exactly. The Stoics didn't just comfort themselves with having good intentions. They interrogated their actions. They asked, what are you actually building that will outlast you?
But if we're being honest, that is exactly where you and I and probably everyone listening gets stuck.
How so?
Well, if we owe this massive generational obligation to the world, to our teams, to our kids, we paralyze ourselves. We fall into this trap of waiting for the absolute perfect moment to start.
The perfect moment myth.
Yes. We want to be 100% sure we're planting the right tree in the right soil with the right fertilizer on the exact perfect sunny day.
And that, psychologically speaking, is just paralysis dressed up as patience.
Ouch.
We tell ourselves we're being careful, but really, we're just hiding. The ancient wisdom of Ecclesiastes 11.4 calls this out directly. It says, farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest.
Because the conditions will never, ever be ideal.
Never.
Waiting for perfect conditions is like sitting in your driveway waiting for every single traffic light in the entire city to turn green before you start your car.
Right.
It's absurd. You just have to drive and handle the red lights as they come.
That's a great way to put it. Silo Bloom argues this perfectly. He says there's no such thing as a perfect moment. There are just moments.
We make them perfect.
Exactly. We make them perfect through our decisive action. The quality of a moment isn't handed to you on a silver platter. It's forged by your willingness to actually act within it.
And when you finally do act, especially if you're trying to build something new or change a toxic environment, it is going to be incredibly tough.
Oh, absolutely.
Seth Godin talks about this when he discusses market creation. If you're trying to build a new culture of accountability at your job or set a new standard in your family life, you are a pioneer.
And pioneers face resistance.
Brutal resistance that the settlers who come later will never even see. Because you're the one out there clearing the brush.
And you can't wait to be put on the right stage to start doing that clearing work. Frosty Westring gives this amazing instruction on this. He says, make the big time where you are.
Make the big time where you are.
Stop waiting for the promotion to be a leader. Stop waiting for the perfect partner to be a good listener. If we connect this to the bigger picture, acting without perfect conditions is really about how we handle difficulty.
Right.
Hardship isn't an annoying interruption to your life that you just have to wait out. Hardship is the actual curriculum.
Ryan Holiday reflects on this beautifully in the context of parenting children who have specific challenges. He says that the resistance and the hardship aren't things to resent. They actually offer perspective, deep connection, and a type of love that can only be forged through trials.
It leads directly into the Choose Your Hard framework.
Yes. Oh, if you're listening and feeling a little overwhelmed by all this framework is so democratically useful because it applies to literally everyone.
It really does.
It goes like this. Marriage is hard, but divorce is hard. Choose your hard. Obesity is hard, but maintaining fitness is hard. Choose your hard.
Debt is hard. Discipline is hard.
Exactly. Being financially disciplined is hard, but being deep in debt is hard. Hardship isn't avoidable in this life. It's selectable.
And if we connect that to what we've been discussing, choosing your hard is the ultimate act of agency. The person who shows up early, stays late, and volunteers for the difficult, unglamorous task isn't a masochist.
No.
They are someone who has chosen their hard. And by choosing it, they've claimed ownership over it, rather than letting life just randomly drop hardship on their head.
Which changes everything.
It does. But, as Confucius reminds us, simply suffering through difficulty isn't enough. You have to actually reflect on it.
Right.
He said the experience without reflection or study is useless, and thought without study is dangerous. The difficulty is only instructive if you're paying attention to what it's teaching you.
Okay, so let's take a breath here. We've talked about relentless discipline, ignoring external validation, choosing your hard, carrying heavy stoic obligations, and planting trees for other people while fighting through brutal resistance.
It's a lot.
Honestly, if you're listening to this on your commute, you might just want to turn the car around and go back to bed.
Yeah, it sounds utterly exhausting.
It does.
It is a massive, heavy load, and if that was the whole picture, it would crush you.
Right. But there is a really crucial counterweight to all of this discipline, and it comes from a surprisingly tender story about General Douglas MacArthur.
Yes, one of the most demanding, rigid, and intense military commanders in American history.
Right. According to William Manchester's biography, every single morning at 7:30, this fiercely intense general, who was literally carrying the weight of wars on his shoulders, locked his office door.
Yeah.
And for a brief window, he let his young son Arthur march him around the bedroom shouting, boom, boom, boomity boom.
It's such an amazing image.
It is. And Ryan Holiday looks at this and says, the takeaway is that no one, literally no one, is too busy for crazy time at home. If it's rare for you to be silly with the people you love, you're doing life wrong.
Absolutely.
But I do have to ask, why is this detail about MacArthur playing boomity boom even included in a collection about intense discipline and stoicism? It feels so out of place.
Because without it, you've missed the entire point of the philosophy.
Really?
Yeah. Without this ability to be made completely ridiculous by love, a leader hasn't achieved the inner freedom that Stoicism actually promises.
Oh, wow.
They've just traded one neurotic compulsion, like chasing status, for another neurotic compulsion, like being a relentless disciplinarian.
So the discipline becomes its own trap.
Exactly. All of this discipline, all of this heavy obligation we've talked about, it has to have room to breathe. Play is the proofs that you are actually free.
Play is the proof that you are actually free. That makes so much sense. It really brings in Pat Summitt's definition of loyalty, too.
Mm-hmm.
The legendary basketball coach said that true loyalty is valuing those who tell you the untethered truth.
Yes, and think about that MacArthur morning routine. It is an act of profound, untethered truth-telling.
Right.
The child's pure joy isn't managed. It isn't curated for an audience. The general receives it completely without his armor, without his medals, without his rank, and without the intimidating distance that power usually requires.
G.K. Chesterton wrote that education is simply a society's soul passing to the next generation.
That's beautiful.
MacArthur's unguarded presence in that bedroom, his willingness to just be a goofy dad for 20 minutes, was the deepest lesson he could possibly give his son about what it means to be a man.
And it's the deepest lesson any team can receive from a leader, too. It demonstrates that you can hold immense responsibility, you can choose your hard, you can do all the invisible work, but you can still remain fundamentally softly human.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've journeyed through the SWEAT pledge, the architecture of equanimity, the drowning man in Amsterdam, planting trees, and playing in the bedroom. How do we pull all of these diverse threads together?
Well, it synthesizes into a single, unyielding core coaching command.
Which is?
Show up and be the example, not the opinion. Not the projection, not the angry tweet, the example. Everything else compounds on its own.
Be the example.
Yeah. Character in action and clarity of self are the twin foundations. You simply cannot demonstrate what you haven't built in the dark. And you can't build it in the dark if you're constantly looking outward for the crowd's validation.
And if you do build it, it all leads to this quiet list of real luxuries that was hidden deep in our sources today.
I love this list.
It's not a list of yachts or mansions or verified check marks. The real luxuries of life lived from the inside out are time, health, a quiet mind, slow mornings, rest without guilt, calm and boring days, and meaningful conversations.
You'll notice that list doesn't appear in any ancient Roman text, and it's certainly not going to go viral on a hustle culture page. But it is the ultimate destination.
It's what everyone actually wants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All the grueling discipline, the voluntary hardship, the choosing your hard, the presence, it's all in service of creating a life that can actually be inhabited. Not a life that is merely performed for an audience, but a life deeply inhabited by you.
Norman Vincent Peale gives a piece of advice that pairs perfectly with this quiet luxury. He said, "Never talk defeat."
Which is powerful.
At first glance, it sounds like a cheesy, toxic positivity trick. But if you look at the mechanics of what we've discussed today, it's entirely different. Speaking in defeat accidentally constructs a reality that reflects it.
Exactly. The architecture of your inner life physically shapes your outer life. The person who habitually uses the language of defeat, who constantly vocalizes how unfair everything is, slowly builds a reality that matches that bitterness.
Without even noticing they're holding the hammer.
Right. But the person who names those real luxuries, the quiet mind, the slow mornings, the meaningful conversations, and does the invisible work every day to preserve them, they're building something weatherproof.
It's all connected. Which brings us right back to the very first question we asked.
Right.
We established earlier that you look like your habits, not your goals.
Yes.
So, as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a new thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Look closely at your daily routine right now. What invisible habit is quietly shaping your future without your permission? And more importantly, is it building a life you actually want to inhabit? Keep asking those hard questions and keep diving deep.